Princess Alara was born without sight, but the kingdom whispered that she saw more than all of them combined. She heard whispers no one else could hear. They drifted through empty halls, across cold stone floors, carried by winds that never blew. They were the voices of the dead. Alara never feared them. She saw them as guardians, as friends in the endless dark. They warned her of approaching storms, guided her through the castle's winding mazes, and even comforted her during the long, silent nights when loneliness wrapped around the palace like a cold, damp fog. For as long as she could remember, the dead were her eyes, her companions, her silent protectors. But one night, everything changed. The whispers, usually calm and steady, began to tremble. They weren't just speaking, they were begging. As the grand clock tower bells struck the solemn hour of midnight, the voices swirled around her, murmuring a prophecy she had never heard before. Alara, at sunrise, someone close to you will betray you. Run. Her heartbeat froze in her chest. A chill, colder than any winter night, crept down her spine. Who? She whispered into the darkness, her voice barely audible. But for the first time in her life, the dead had fallen silent. The air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken dread. Alara knew one thing with absolute certainty. The dead never went silent unless something far darker, something more terrifying than betrayal itself, stood behind the truth. Clutching her polished wooden cane, its familiar smoothness a small comfort in her hand, she rose from her bed. She couldn't just wait for the sun, for betrayal to find her. She had to find it first. She stepped out into the night-filled corridors, the cold stone floor a stark contrast to the warmth of her room. Her every sense was on high alert, listening, feeling, trying to pierce the suffocating silence. Then she heard it, footsteps echoing behind her. They were familiar, soft, careful, almost hesitant. The sound was so close, so intimate, it could only be one person. Father? She called out, her voice a mixture of hope and fear. The blind king, her father, emerged from the shadows, his own steps guided by a lifetime of navigating the darkness they both shared. They were more than just father and daughter. They shared a bond forged in a world without sight. Alara, why are you awake at this hour? He asked, but his voice wavered, a strange, unnatural tremor that did not escape her notice. It was a note of discord in the symphony of sounds she knew so well. The dead spoke to me, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. They told me a betrayal is coming. At sunrise, her father's breath hitched. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible sound, but to Alara, it was as loud as a thunderclap. She heard everything. She always heard everything. That small, stolen breath told her more than words ever could. He knew. Alara, he whispered, his voice laced with a strange urgency. Do you trust me? She wanted to say yes. Oh, how she wanted to believe in the one man who had always protected her, the man who understood her world of darkness. She wanted to trust the sound of his voice, the warmth of his presence. But as she opened her mouth to answer, the voices of the dead returned, faint and shaking, as if from a great distance. They whispered a single, terrifying warning. He does not come alone. The air split with the sound of steel scraping from a sheath. The sharp, metallic ring echoed in the hall, coming from just behind her father. It wasn't him. There was someone else. A soldier, a traitor, an assassin hiding in the king's shadow. Alara didn't hesitate. She threw herself back just as the man lunged. She swung her cane with all her might, the wood connecting with a jarring clang of metal. She heard the grunt of a man, the scrape of the blade against the stone floor, the whistle of it cutting through the air where she had just been standing. Footsteps clashed, armor shifted and rattled, and her own heartbeat pounded in her ears like war drums. The hall had become a battlefield, and she was in the center of it, blind and fighting for her life. Alara down. Her father shouted, his voice raw with panic. A sword slashed through the air right where her head had been a second earlier. She felt the wind of its passage on her cheek. She dropped and rolled, the cold stone scraping her skin, breathless and disoriented. The whispers surged back, clear and urgent, cutting through the chaos. Left, now forward. Stop. She obeyed without question, freezing in place. The soldier's blade whooshed past her, missing by inches and embedding itself in a stone pillar with a sickening crunch. Her father seized the moment. She heard the struggle, the grunts of two men locked in a desperate fight. It was a chaotic symphony of straining muscles, shuffling feet, and harsh, ragged breaths. A final cry of agony echoed through the hall. Then silence, a heavy, final silence. Alara pushed herself up, her body trembling. "Father?" she called out, her voice shaking. She reached out with her hands, sweeping through the empty air until her fingers brushed against his. They were trembling too. "Who sent him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why?" The king's voice broke, shattered by grief and guilt. "Alara, it was meant to be me." Her blood turned to ice. She couldn't breathe. It couldn't be true. Not him. He continued, tears she could not see but could hear in his voice, slipping down his blind eyes. "A prophecy. It was made when you were born. It said that I would die if you lived to see your 18th birthday. Tomorrow." His voice cracked. "For years, the royal council has pressured me. They saw you as a threat to my life, to the kingdom's stability. Tonight, they gave me an ultimatum, your life or mine. I wanted to protect you, but they ordered your death. I couldn't do it, Alara. I can never do it. So when I refused, they sent one of their own to finish the job and to make it look like I had failed." Alara's heart shattered not from the sting of betrayal, but from the immense weight of the truth behind it. He hadn't come to harm her. He had come to warn her, to save her, even if it meant defying a prophecy and his own counsel. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding him tightly. "Father," she whispered, her own tears now flowing freely. "You chose me." They stood there for a long time, two blind royals clinging to each other in the dark, a father and a daughter who had defied a terrible fate. And as the first hint of dawn began to touch the kingdom, bathing the stone walls in a soft golden light she could feel on her skin, the voices of the dead whispered one last, gentle message. "The betrayal is broken. The dawn is yours." Alara stood facing the warm sun she could not see, her father by her side. She felt stronger than ever, more certain of her place in the world. She was Alara, the blind princess who had survived prophecy, who had unmasked treason, and who had conquered destiny itself. The darkness was her kingdom, and for the first time, she truly felt like its queen. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new tale. See you next time.